So hi guys, here we are again talking about coaching, and I'm here today with Yannick and Sevash. And our next question is one that I actually brought to the table as some time ago. I was looking into a course to help me grow my business as a coach. Having done my formal training and kind of being really eager and keen to get out there and find more clients to work with, the biggest barrier I came up against, and especially with the COVID situation that kicked off back in January ultimately, was how to learn how to find clients online. Now, the reason I specify online for me personally is because I had at that time actually chosen an approach at the beginning of the year where I was hoping to kind of go out and meet a lot of people in person networking, just because online isn't something I'm so comfortable with. And I think that sits well with me as a person. So I just favored that approach. But of course, with Corona, it became essential to make a presence online. So at the time, I sought out kind of a few different courses. And the question is really about how, with the amount of courses on offer that I came across, how do you choose one that's right for you and that kind of actually delivers what it says it's going to offer? My initial experience was kind of, the people I was drawn to were the people who screamed the loudest. And having gone to a few open days, I kind of felt a little bit unsure and like kind of questioned the very intense kind of 1 hour format or whatever that was thrown at me, that whilst it seemed very kind of emotionally like it really drew me in because perhaps it used certain vocabulary and certain kind of techniques that just were very well pitched. But when it came down to the logistics of the course, of the amount of payment and how the payment would follow and whether there was any guarantees or not, I just felt a bit overwhelmed and it just kind of created a lot of uncertainty. So that was kind of my scenario, and I thought I'd put it out there to the floor.
Yeah, excellent. Because I really appreciated that, because there's so much out there. There's such a jungle of business courses. And as you say, a lot of people scream very loudly. Some are very clever in just touching on all of your pain points. I had a coach just recently who said, I was sitting there at like midnight and there was a free webinar giving you all of the secrets, So I'm like, yeah, I'll take the free webinar. I'll take the free content. And then there was this woman and he was like, it was as if she's in my head. She knew exactly what I was feeling, experiencing, thinking, and I'm like, she totally gets me. And that builds such a strong connection. And then they're like, you don't have to feel that way. Here's a solution. And it's only going to cost you this much, So he signed up and then got a bit burned. I don't want to mention the course. I don't want to really mention any courses' names because that's not really what this is about. What this is about is what's the process behind finding something that you feel is of substance that can live up to deliver what its promises, and weed out the ones that are dodgy, perhaps. What are some of those signs where you're like, maybe I should stay away from this one, and ultimately there's so many different approaches to this. And there's so many programs out there that, by the way, really deliver excellent value, but there's also a lot of stuff out there that perhaps isn't the right fit for you, I would call it, there's some outright scammers, absolutely. But I think probably the majority of programs really have good intent, and if they don't work for you, maybe they weren't made for you. So I think the question of how do I choose a course that matches who I am and how do I want to work, that's really, really important.
Yeah. So what comes up for me is this. I did a video about this a long time ago, but there's this, and I read this distinction in a book. It talked about the person that sits in a shop and sells holiday tickets and says, hey, you should really go visit Spain. It's beautiful there. and it's very good at selling that holiday resort or that destination. But then if you ask them, like, have you been there? They're like, well, no, I actually haven't been there. But, a lot of people have been there. We have, we've got so many customers that have been there, right? And what we call in our company, when we hire coaches, we call them Sherpas. Sherpa is another word for a mountain guide. See, a mountain guide will has traveled on top of the mountain, has been on that mountain many times. And that's how I personally, that's for me, it's been really useful, is looking at a business course that's run by someone that's walked the talk, right? So because this coaching industry is growing so fast, there's a lot of marketers, there's a lot of consultants that want to kind of jump on that bandwagon and take advantage of that. And don't get me wrong, some of them they have a good understanding of marketing or sales. They can add value to coaches. But it's just really, I think, personally, I prefer to invest in a coach that has grown a business. And again, doesn't need to be always the right thing, but it's just really understanding, what do I want out of a business course? Right?
Isn't it then really important that that person who's walked the talk and then presumably teaches you how they have walked it and teach you how you can do the same as they did? Isn't it then super important that that person is super similar to you in terms of how they do things, what their values are? Because if somebody is like super extrovert and they love writing and they're super open and vulnerable and they don't have any issues with putting their whole life story and everything about them out on social media, they will tell you an approach of using social media to create a lot of clients, but if you're a kind of conservatively brought up, maybe introvert, kind of shy person who's not particularly technologically adept, then that's probably not going to work for you, regardless of what they tell you and how much it worked for them.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. So I think there's different layers of things that we want to look at, criteria. Character could be one of them, right? Because we want to make sure, if you look at someone, usually people that sell business courses, they have some material there for free. The good ones have it. In fact, the good ones probably put some of the best work out for free, right? But the idea is this, right? That sometimes it's, some coaches, they're very, very much like a one direction way of doing stuff. I worked with a business coach around 4.5 years ago at the start of my career that talked a lot. The only strategy that he was sharing is, well, you need to build a webinar. You need to run Facebook ads to that webinar, get people on a call, and then sell them that, right? For me, I never even got off the first step because I didn't know, I wasn't really good at tech, right? So I thought, well, hey, maybe this isn't for me. And I was fortunate enough to, come across the Prosperous Coach book, which talks around a whole different philosophy, right? But so what's really important is to see, well, what do I really enjoy? What am I good at? Some people are good. Some coaches that come into coaching have a good background into using, tech. So I guess it's, this conversation is not an easy conversation because what can be right for one person can be maybe the wrong thing for another person, right? But what we want to really slow down to is, what is my criteria? What do I really want? What is my goal? And what am I willing to do to get there? Am I willing to, use social media, or do I just want to use offline? Am I willing to, do things that are uncomfortable? Right? And I think if we explore that, we can probably come to a better understanding of what's right and what's not right. Yeah.
So what are some good questions to ask yourself before you go out and research different programs?
Good questions to ask.
Yeah, what kind of questions do we need to ask yourself? Because, like, for example, I'm imagining somebody is like, well, what kind of person am I? What kind of approach would match me? I'm sure we can look at different programs and see what they have. I guess the question I'm asking is, what would be some of the first steps before we engage with all of the stuff that's out there, which often is designed to suck us in, even if it might not be quite the right match for us?
Yeah. Well, personally, I have a personal approach. I stalk someone for at least 3-6 months before I invest in someone. Sometimes it's even longer, right? And when stalking, I will follow that person, consume their content, and usually their free content has to be really good, right? And here's the thing. Look, one of the things I wrote down is testimonials. Now, it's very easy. Often you hear like, well, a good business course has a lot of testimonials, but that sometimes can be, that cannot always be the right thing, because I know some
so easy
business,
to create, no?
yeah, I don't want to mention name, but one of the business courses that I joined, they still use the same testimonials from 3-4 years ago, and they're just repeating that, right? The reality is they don't have a lot of good testimonials, but people don't know that because they're just keep repeating the same things.
So we can't trust testimonials really, or which ones can we trust?
Yeah, so sometimes we can trust them, right? But that's one of the things. Another thing is actually experiencing that person, right? Nicki talked about a workshop, but actually I would, there's this research done. It's called the 7-11-4. The 7 stands for 7 hours. And actually, we don't want to just spend one session with someone. If that person is saying, well, hey, you need to enroll, I would be a bit cautious, right? What we ideally want to do is spend 7 hours. So this research showed that even the biggest companies do this. They have campaigns that take customers through a journey, which builds, the trust with them. So the customer can get to know them, like them, and trust them, right? But usually that's 7 hours, 11 interactions over 4 different locations, right?
Yeah, that's true. A lot of people I have in consultations, they tend to tell me that they've engaged with hours of my content before they went into such a conversation. So it's super important to build that kind of trust. But then also, I know. Sorry, you weren't finished.
No, I think that's a really good point. That the trust has to be there, and the second thing is the expectations, right? I think Nicki mentioned the guarantee. Not a lot of courses have a guarantee. Not a lot of business courses have a guarantee. But I think it's important to get a real, if there is no guarantee, to get an understanding, well, what can I expect?
Like a money back guarantee, or?
Yeah, so it could be a money back guarantee. So a lot of good business courses, they have either like a 30 days love it or leave it, kind of like a guarantee, like, hey, if you don't love it in this period, you can leave it. Some courses will extend that even to 3 months, right? But now that might not, it doesn't mean that if a course has that it's a great course, right? But that's the starting point, having something like that. And then, having a guarantee around results, right? While it's not in our control.
Guarantee results?
Yeah, good point. Well, here's the thing, right? I think as business, I do myself business coaching, but here's the thing, right? As in life coaching, we have a certain level of confidence that we can help someone, right? Now, maybe it's not in that sense, it's different, right? But in a business setting, while it's not in our control what the other person does, right? We can create a guarantee that creates a bit of security for the other person.
But isn't that always necessarily linked? Because I don't think it's that different from coaching to like doing a business course. Because in both cases, the client needs to do all the work. I mean, unless it's a business course where they actually set up funnels for you, and but you still need to create the content. You still need to create the trust. You still need to show up and be really good at what you do. So I like, if I were in that situation, in a position of like running a business course, and I would want to give a guarantee, I can only give a guarantee if you apply yourself. If it's similar in coaching, I can. Sometimes I said, like, I can almost guarantee that you can do this thing that you just described to me, if you apply yourself, if you get out of your comfort zone, if you do the hard work, if you put the legwork in. Yeah,
exactly. So what I've seen is with some business courses across, here, Australia, New Zealand, with some really good business courses in America, is what I've seen is they've now introduced guarantee, but there are conditions stipulated in the contract, which means, for example, well, if you have to attend 80% of the calls. You have to, for example, at a minimum have, let's say, just 5 sales calls a week. So they understand that if someone does the activity, they can help them get good at it, and then they can help them get the result, right? So of course there has to be, something there. So it's like, hey, I can help you get really good at basketball, but you have to do the work. If you're willing to do 2 hours practice a day, right, and you're willing to, sleep this much, eat this, I know I can help you I know I can get you there. Now, of course, the detail is important, right? personally, I think a guarantee. Look, I've experimented with it, and I think it's really interesting because what I was thinking about is, well, how does a client react to that? Because some people could say, well, you know what, I'm not gonna do anything because it's guaranteed anyway. But what I've found from experience is that actually, when it's done in the right way, people take ownership and people actually get better results because it kind of takes the pressure off. But they know that, hey, well, I need to tick some boxes here. I need to show up. I need to do the work. And actually, we put more emphasis on you need to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
If you do the work,
Mm-hmm.
We create the results together, which is, out of our control. And what I've seen is with really good business courses, they emphasize that this is not in our control.
Mm-hmm.
But we've worked with a lot of people that have created results like that.
Yeah.
Right. So I would really look at a variation of those things, like what testimonials does this person have? How much experience does this person have working with different people? Are all the people very similar? Are all those testimonials very similar? Are they all like, 6 figures in 6 weeks, or have they all used, like, there are some really good courses, right? But if you look at their website and their testimonials, everyone builds their business in one way, which is, for example, the webinar funnel, which is quite a popular one, right? And again, you have to just ask yourself, well, is that what I want?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the direction I want to go to?
Yeah.
Or, is this the direction I want to go to?
And I think it's so important to listen to yourself when it comes to that, to know yourself to some degree. What kind of person am I? I think the testimonials are particularly powerful if it's somebody that you actually know, But I'd love to hand back to Nicki because this is your very much lived experience over the last 6 months or so. So I'm sure some of what we just said you did, but maybe there's something to add. Could you talk a bit about that?
Well, just tell you what happened for me in the end. I think, the determining factors after having consulted quite a variety of sources and approaches, the key criteria for me to decide was, one, what is it exactly I want? And for me, it was very clear that what I wanted specifically in terms of business is how to use online platforms. And I guess the ones I had in mind personally were Facebook and LinkedIn to promote myself. So it was clear to me that whatever course I chose.
How did you get to that? How did you find out what exactly you want?
Well,
if it's a short answer.
Yeah, it is a short answer. Like I said, initially in January before COVID hit, my approach for marketing was going to be quite organic and going out in person because I'm just more of a person-to-person individual and I don't enjoy technology. But then with COVID, there was no opportunity for that. So I knew I had to find a way of doing it online. So it was important I find somewhere online, and within online, the two immediate things that after lots of exploration that kept repeating themselves were Facebook and LinkedIn. So in any case, I needed a course that was going to address content generation, which I would then disseminate on LinkedIn and Facebook. All the better if the course kind of mentions these platforms, but whatever online strategy. So that was a key criteria.
So it's important to be clear on it. And for you, it just happened to be quite clear. And I think what I would put to the coaches out there is that if you're not clear about it, rather than just investing in the course that, seems to tick some of the boxes, be really clear about it. Whether that's something you go through yourself and you ask yourself a lot of questions. That's why asking about the questions. Maybe you work with a coach in order to figure out which business program to take, or you talk to other people. If you have those conversations and you get really clear on what kind of business do I actually want to build, I think then the process becomes a lot easier.
I think, that is what did I want and why did I want that? And, what I wanted is online stuff. Why? Because Corona was blocking me from being person to person. The second thing that was really important was, going on a sort of trial call or webinar, whatever, and meeting the person and seeing what they're about and how they like to coach and who they are perhaps as a person, what's their philosophy, and finding someone who closely mimicked kind of what I felt I am. So it was finding the person with the right rapport and kind of the trust.
You had, sorry to interrupt again, but I know you had a conversation with somebody, you got quite excited about a course that you in the end didn't go for. I think it might be useful to share what that experience was about. Because as far as I remember, you almost invested quite a lot of money in a course that in the end didn't quite feel right.
Yeah, I think, that particular course the coach was incredibly charismatic, and I felt very kind of drawn in by his approach, and I was like, he's powerful, like, and he gave demonstrations. I was like, wow, that's strong. Like, if I had that confidence, that would be amazing. Maybe I should do the coaching program by someone who can instill that kind of confidence. But what then became apparent, one thing that became apparent to me is like, okay, maybe I'm just not that bold, brash, confident person who puts it out there straight. Maybe I'm a bit more softer and a bit more, inquisitive. I'm just not that person. I don't want to act a person I'm not. So there was that discernment. The other thing was perhaps that I suddenly
fake it till you make it, Nicki.
I know, fake it till you make it. I don't know, I just, maybe I've decided to embrace, my strengths as they are rather than try to aspire to be something else. But
by the way, I'm joking, but like for some people that works, they just like need to get out of their comfort zone, and then they really connect with a confident person in them. So I don't want to belittle the fake it till you make it approach. I think often it can lead to very difficult situations where you're pretending you're somebody that you're not, and then it's very inauthentic, and it starts eating at you. But sometimes it does work, and people really break through and connect authentically with that confident person in them. Or, they decide to share more of their life with the world, and that feels right once they get the feedback. So it's a bit more.
I absolutely agree with that approach. Actually, that takes us back to kind of decide who you want to be, and then, work out what that person would do and all of that. And I think that's really, really powerful. And then, maybe dial the intensity down to the level that it feels authentic, right? But so there was that. The second thing, I suddenly did just become a little bit skeptical, and not in a bad way, just because that aggressive approach doesn't resonate well with me. I'm a bit of a slower thinker, and it takes me a bit of time to digest. And at the end of the seminar, it did, I think, as it should, because it was trying to make a sale, and that sale will help many people do a lot of great coaching. But it's like, it did put a bit of time pressure on me. The amount was kind of definitely a bit more than I wanted to spend, or I would have had to be very convinced. And I also felt at some point, there was so much emotion used to, like, press my pain points, that I felt a bit like, manipulated is the wrong word, but just because it became so emotional, that didn't feel right. It kind of took away the rationality that I kind of prefer in that process. I don't want to draw. It's like when someone makes you buy emotionally in like a food shop or in a clothes store, right? So that just didn't feel comfortable. And then, I after looking through a variety of sources, I very naturally felt actually drawn to someone who I felt resonated a lot more of what I'd like to stand for, and who showed up in a way that I'd like to show up, and who used an approach that I feel comfortable using. So it was just a bit of trial and error, and kind of the process itself helped me to clarify what I wanted and what I clearly didn't want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think there's a challenge in there, because how do you connect with that person? Like, how do you get to those 7 hours, I think it was? I know there's a lot of content from people out there, and I think if you spend a lot of time with somebody's content, you grasp especially as a coach, you grasp their values, you grasp their philosophy, you grasp whether they seem real or not, whether they're consistent with their message and how they show up. It helps a lot to have that as a personal connection, because I think somebody can play a role for 7 hours on their internet content, and sometimes it can be, some people are very perceptive of like, something's not quite right about this person. So I think it's actually quite difficult to fool a very perceptive person over the course of 7 hours, so I think the advice to engage with a lot of their content is really useful. When the course provider gets over a certain threshold, I think it can become a bit difficult to get to, because you might trust the person who founded the business school, and you really trust them. But what you would really get is, their facilitators, who might be very different people, so can you necessarily trust the system that the person has created to work for you based on the person that they are? Maybe that system got optimized by other people, and they're just kind of the figurehead of the program, because they're very charismatic, but it's not necessarily their program. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that's why it's important to ask, well, what if this doesn't work for me? If I join and I don't like it? And I think that response is really important, the response of that business coach, right? And, another thing for myself is, I'm part of a program which 1 year ago was the right program, and it's really helped me a lot. I probably got 10 times the value of what I've invested. The investment was really big investment. but right now, after some reflection, it's not really serving me anymore. Right? And sometimes, we want also we talked about that, the why. Why do we want what we want? And in different phases of our coaching journey, we will need different kind of support. Right? And I think that's really important to figure out, well, what do I need right now? And another question that I would ask is something we haven't mentioned yet is, is there actually coaching included? Because I've been part of some really cool programs from 7,000 to even 15,000, 20,000 investment. And some of them, the strategies that they shared were very specific for coaches, but there was no actual, while there was some support in terms of they would answer your questions, there wasn't actually coaching support. And that's fair. It doesn't mean, by the way, that that's a bad program. It just means that you just have to be clear on your expectations, because then it means often that you might need to hire another life coach for extra support, right? But what I've personally seen is that the courses that are really good, right, they usually have a combination of that, right? And actually, I did a training on this for our clients. But if you imagine a simple triangle, like some of the best courses, they have three things. They have, a step-by-step strategy, and they have coaching, high performance coaching or mindset coaching. And then the third thing is they have world-class support. Because if a business course has one thing, they could be the best in strategy. But if they don't know how to support someone to go through their obstacles, people get stuck. And it's very easy to say, well, it's your job to get unstuck. You're a coach. But I personally don't think that's really fair. And then the third thing is having that support system there. Yeah, and that's, by the way, something that, for me, like, I like to observe, coaches that are doing much better, coaches that have been doing this for 10, 20 years, and look at them and look at how they structure their coaching programs or their business programs, and really learn from that. And that's one of the things that those three things I've seen is really crucial to client success.
Wow, great.
Nice.
There's been so much value in this. Nicki, I'd love you to just kind of bring us to a close. There's your own journey. Is there anything else that helped you, or anything new that emerged out of this?
No, I think it's been really nice bouncing ideas around with you guys and just hearing your thoughts on the subject too. I'm really happy with the choice I made, and I'm really enjoying my course, and I'm still in the process, and I found it absolutely invaluable. So the main thing I would add is actually, I think I highly recommend anyone who is struggling to get their business off the ground, who's maybe at the beginning of their journey or maybe later on, to seek out something like a course. Again, it's kind of, it's putting almost your trust in yourself as a coach by putting it, in the coaching that's available and out there specifically on that subject. And the moment I committed, and in the process of committing, it was very clear to me that I wanted to commit, that I had to commit, that without committing, I'm not going to progress to where I want to get to. So like, for anyone with any reservations, I can only recommend it. Really
what got you over the feeling of, holy shit, I'm going to spend thousands of pounds on this?
I mean, it is the fact that I just knew that if I didn't do it, I'm going to struggle for so much longer, go through so many highs and lows. I guess I have a previous journey as a freelancer behind me. So, I kind of know what my weaknesses are, and that I didn't want to repeat that same cycle of getting disheartened, all of that. So I just, I completely trusted in coaching, in my profession, in where I want to get in as a coach. And there was no doubt in my mind that that's the next step I needed to take and invest in and commit to myself.
So, and in coaching, it can go quite quick, depending what you charge, to like double, triple, quadruple your income, just by asking for it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it needs a bit more, but like for me, when I worked with my business, more of a mentor, he called himself a coach, but it was more of a mentor. I put my prices up by like 500%, because I was at the same price for a number of years, and it was possible. And I didn't need to get over myself, so it was relatively simple, but also very complex. But I had the investment back. It was £3,000 back then for 6 sessions, which seemed insane to me, but I got it back after 2 clients.
Amazing.
Because I was asking for the new rate. So whatever you invest in your business, you can pay back quite quickly if you do it well,
Yeah, Nicki mentioned commitment, right? And I think I want to just really clarify that a business course is not like a magic pill. It won't solve your problems. You have to be 100% committed to the process, right? And I think that's such an important thing. Is right now I'm thinking of making transition to another course, but we're just really looking at how much time can we really dedicate towards this program, right? Can we really attend? Like one of the things is that the program that I'm part of right now, one of the struggles is run by someone from Australia, right? And the time zone is very different, right? And that for me plays a role as well. But it's just really like, well, how much can I really commit to it? How much time can I really put into it? Because we have to take 100% ownership of that, right? No matter how good a course is, if we don't put the work in, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, and a few grand is really creating some commitment for most people.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, most of the time, money does really create plays a big role in creating the commitment. It's not always like that,
I often say money buys commitment, and commitment buys success or change.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
Cool. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. And guys out there, if there are business programs that you trust, do share them with us. We had a little conversation before we went live that we didn't want to advertise any specific programs. Those of you who follow us and know us will know that there's a program that we could recommend. But if you have programs that you recommend because you've done them or you've perhaps created them, and there's something you can tell us, tell us a bit of a story, tell us why that program worked for you. And given that we talked about that it's important to be the good match in terms of character or how you approach things. If you listen closely to this episode and you have a program that you recommend, make some of those links with what we've talked about so people know it's not just an advertising from somebody who comments underneath every podcast about business programs with their business program, so make it real and make it relevant. And perhaps somebody's out there who's like, oh, that sounds a program that would resonate well with me. And then they check it out and you really help them out. So this is a community effort, as it is with talking about coaching. So thank you. And thank you, Nicki, for sharing your story.
Pleasure.
Hey, everybody. If you found this conversation helpful for you and your coaching practice, then there's a couple of ways that you can support the podcast and stay up to date with future episodes. Obviously, you can subscribe here on YouTube if that's your jam. If you want to get it straight into your inbox, never miss an episode, there's a link in the description to can sign up for our mailing list. You can leave us a review or follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and come join us on Facebook. We'll get the conversation going there. Obviously, leave us a comment. You can support us on Patreon. And any way you choose to do that, tell a friend, whatever you want to do. We really appreciate it, and we hope you get a lot out of it. So see you next time.